Monthly maintenance is going to be something that you'll be doing about once a month. If you want to access that maintenance when the timer isn't automatically popping up and telling you that, then you'll want to go into your software and go to Settings and Maintenance. And in this case, we'll be looking at the monthly maintenance. Please follow all the maintenance procedures carefully and apply the proper amounts of specified lubrication during each step. Melco is not going to be held responsible if you're not doing this. Go ahead and select Next. Warning, if you currently have a hoop or clamping system on the machine, please remove it. Failure to fully remove a clamping system can result in damage to the machine. I'm going to be counting cap driver or wide angle driver as one of those clamping systems. If you have anything on here, go ahead and remove it, please. Select Next. When I pressed Next, the carriage moved all the way back, and then it moved all the way over to the side as well. So I have access to this end cap over here. Let's get that a little bit easier for you to see. So what I need to do is just remove this end cap by pulling straight out. I'm going to hold on to that. Select Next. So where I'm looking, the carriage moved back. That's great. It also moved all the way over to the side. And so what I'm looking for is right under here. And what I'll do is I'll take a cloth and I will clean this out on both sides, front and back. And there are two rails, or two areas that I want to clean, above and below this kind of rail that it's riding on. So that's where I want to be looking, is right up in here. Let's see if we can't get you a little bit closer look. Inside of here you can see where that grease is sitting. And that grease will start to gather and hold lint from all of your different projects. So after a while it'll get a little bit dirty, and you'll want to wipe that out and clean it up. And you'll want to do that. You can see on this end what we're looking at with the rail, and then above and below it, same thing. The rail on this side, above and below it. So we're going to do the back of the machine and the front of the machine. And to do that, I tend to just fold up some cloth, go in as far back as I can reach, clean that out, and I'll do that again. Fold it up again, go back in as far as I can, clean that out. And the grease is red. So once I get that cleaned out, I'll go and do the front as well. Both sides, above and below. Select Next. So now I want to use a clean cloth to reapply that grease. So I'm going to grab a piece of that cloth, and then you'll also want to grab the HP grease from your operator's kit. And you want to apply that grease to that cloth and then spread that grease evenly on those two indents above and below that rail. So I will apply some clean grease to that rag, and then I will come back in and apply that and try to spread that relatively evenly across. Got a couple of little areas that I'm going to smooth out. And then as those rollers will go across it, it will smooth out. And I'm going to do the same thing across the front. And I tend to switch hands because it makes it a little bit easier for me. Okay, so I cleaned this. I reapplied the grease. One thing, I've got a little bit of reflection that makes it look like there's grease on the top here, but there's not. I want to make sure that I keep this top area relatively clean. You want to reinstall that end cap and then click Next. When I clicked Next, the carriage moved all the way over to give us access to the other side. So now I need to rotate this around and get you a zoomed in view of the other side over here. And we're going to be doing the same thing just on the other side. Let's remove that end cap, and we'll do it just by pulling. Select Next. So just like on the other side, I'm going to take that rag, I'm going to go as far back as I can, I'm going to clean that out. Upper and lower. Now I want to be very careful as I'm doing this not to get any grease on this piece right up here. So this is a sensor, and if I get grease on it, it's not going to be able to sense very well. I went across the back, now I'm going to go across the front. Just one, come across and go in here. There we go. Okay, select next. Now that I cleaned out the old grease, I want to reapply some new fresh grease. I'm going to apply that HP grease from my operator's kit onto a rag and then reapply. And I'm going to be very careful, again, not to get any grease on that sensor. So I'm going to go back as far as I can and try to evenly spread that. Okay, so I just did the back. I need to do the front. And again, I swap hands because it makes it a little bit easier for me. There we go. To replace the end cap, just push into place. Select next. So when I clicked next, it moved the carriage back forward, and then it moved the needle case all the way over. And what we will be doing now is removing this cover. So it moved the needle case out of the way to have easier access to this screw right here. And then there's screws on the back that we'll deal with as well. Using a 3mm Allen wrench, I'm going to remove that front button head screw. And now I want to remove these 3 back screws. This one is longer than the others. That'll be helpful to remember when we're putting it back together. So I'm going to take these out. There we go. And then this cover just lifts off and away. Select next. So now the software is asking me to add 25 drops of oil to an oiling point, and the place it's asking for is located right here. And there is a printed circuit board, so again, make sure, just like when you're oiling the needle bars, in other maintenance procedures, make sure not to get oil on the circuit board. So I'm going to come around, and I'm going to drop in 25 drops of oil right into this oiling port right here. Select next. So now we need to reinstall the cover. So I'm going to slide it into place. Make sure not to pinch this wire as you're doing it. There we go. And I'm going to set it loosely there for a minute. I will typically go ahead and do this front one first, and I'll put all of these screws in lightly, and then once I get them all in, I will tighten them. Move this into place. I'm going to start each of these, but I'm not going to tighten them very much until I get them all in. Otherwise, the chance of me getting them all in and getting this in the right place goes down. So this one's kind of the one that's a little bit trickier. It's the longer of them. So I'm going to line that up and then find it, and then I'll go ahead and screw that in. And now that I've got all of these in, I'll go ahead and tighten them down. Select next. So when I clicked next, the needle case moved all the way over to give me better access to take the other cover off. So let's get this turned around so that you can see what I'm doing. And we're going to basically repeat the removal and reinstallation process, just like we did with this cover, we're going to do it with this cover. I typically start with the front screw. And if I'm having trouble getting it out of there, your needle orientation magnet can be really helpful like that. Now I want to remove the 3 screws on the back. And then this last one's the longer one. There we go. And then I can just lift this off to the side and away. Select Next. So now we're looking at oiling, kind of the same spot, just on the other side. We need to add 25 drops of oil. Select Next. So now we're going to need the X cable tension gauge, and that's going to be found in your operator's kit. And it's going to look like this, like just a rectangle piece of metal with a couple of little bits in it for you to hang off of that cable itself. So we're going to come back here and we're going to hang this on this cable just like it's shown in the software. You'll bring it from the back towards the front and let it just hang there. Select Next. Now you need to look at the cable and decide if your machine is in spec or out of spec, and we're going to be paying attention to this window right here and where this cable falls within it. If the cable falls within that window, you are in spec. If it falls outside of the window, you are out of spec. Now if it's to the bottom side of the window, something like this, between the little bitty notch here and the window, it may be that your machine is brand new, and that's okay. If it's to, and I'm pressing on this to make this happen, if it's to the top of that window, your cable is loose and will need to be tightened. If you're in spec, go ahead and click In Spec. Here I have an example of a machine that is out of spec. So I need to select the out of spec option to walk me through the adjustment to put it back into spec. Select Next. To adjust this cable tension, I need to take an adjustable spanner and a 7mm wrench, and a tiny adjustable spanner is really handy. If not, you can use pliers for this as well. But I'm going to be looking right back behind this control panel. I can slide that adjustable spanner right here and come in right here. As you tighten that nut, you can watch that gauge move until you're back into spec. Now, I struggle doing this from the side of the machine. I would prefer to do it from the front of the machine. That way, tightening and loosening is a little bit more familiar to me than me having to overthink it. Select Next. Now, before I do anything in the software, I'll want to remove this gauge. Simply lift off, pull back slightly, and lift out of the machine. Select Next. Here we have a warning about removing the gauge. If the gauge isn't removed, the machine's going to be moving around. So if you don't remove that gauge, you can cause damage to the machine. So make sure you take the gauge off the machine. Select Next. And when I do that, you can see that it's moving all the way around. You can hear it. What it's doing is it's moving around, redistributing that tension on that cable. Okay. So now we need to replace this gauge. Select Next. So at this screen, it's the same screen you had before, but you've done the adjustment, you've redistributed the tension. So now it's just double checking, how am I looking now? And now you can make your choice again. Are you in spec or out of spec? Select In Spec. Once I select In Spec, I need to remove this gauge. Select Next. Here you've got that warning. If you don't remove that gauge and you put covers back on the machine and you try to run with it with that gauge on there, it's going to cause you some pretty bad issues. So make sure you remove that gauge. Select Next. Now I'm ready to reinstall these covers, so I can slide this into place. And then I'll attach it with those screws. I like to start with the front screw. And just like with the other side, I'm going to get it in but not completely tight. I'll tighten them all when I'm done. So I'll ease that into place. And I'll leave them just loose enough that I can adjust this, which makes this last one easier to get in. And this last one on the corner, that's the longer one. And then once that one's in, I'll go ahead and tighten all of them. Select Next. And now we're going to be looking for the grabber eccentric, which is located on the back side of the needle case. We're going to flip this around and we're going to be looking right back here. So we're looking right here. Select Next. So we're going to be dealing right back here, but we need a couple more tools. So I'm going to get back into my operator's kit. And I'm going to pull out the screwdriver, the little screwdriver, and the wooden stick. This is going to be used to apply some grease, and this is going to be used to get things out of the way. So I need to come in and move this metal out of the way. Select Next. With a little bit of HP grease on the end of my wooden applicator, I'm going to come in and just slide that off across the top of that copper-colored cylinder. And then I'm going to slowly release this back and remove my screwdriver. Select Next. Select Finish. If you want to do more maintenance, you can certainly select that, but if you don't, you can go ahead and confirm out of this page, and now you're ready to load up a design. Once you're done with maintenance, you're ready to go ahead and continue sewing for the day.